I never would have guessed how quickly my life and everything in it could fall apart. It's too late for me now, but maybe by sharing this, I can still help someone else. It feels like so much time has passed, but this only began about a week ago when my language learning app had forced out an update. I didn't really think much of it at first, not until the next time I opened it and it kept glitching. I'd been taking the Italian course for months because my girlfriend Heather is fluent, and I was hoping to surprise her with one of those big romantic gestures that, if it went the way I'd hoped, maybe she'd become more than just my girlfriend. Our anniversary was coming up, and we had reservations somewhere nice. Somewhere big romantic gesture nice. I was in the middle of a lesson when the screen suddenly flickered and froze, then seamlessly switched to a different course for a language I'd never seen before. The new lesson asked me to trace letters from some crazy alphabet. Just looking at them too long gave me a stabbing headache. I figured the update had broken something, so I just closed it out and figured I'd try again later. But every time I opened the app after that, it was the only course I could see. I tried uninstalling it and restarting my phone, but that only made it worse. After that, all my other apps started taking me there too. Even my freaking banking app. After a day, every time I tried using my phone, it popped up and I couldn't get out of it. I showed Heather, while trying to coyly avoid disclosing why I'd been using the app in the first place, and she suggested a factory reset. Even that didn't help. My phone was basically useless. I got so frustrated that I figured, fine, I'll do the damn lesson if it means I can use my phone again. I started it, which at that point essentially meant just turning my phone on and trying to do literally anything with it. Staring at the alphabet again still triggered a headache behind my eyes, and some sort of dark condensation began to form on my phone screen. But I eventually managed to make it through the first lesson. Once I started, though, I couldn't stop. Tracing the strange letters along my phone screen was so captivating. It was addicting. I did more than just the one lesson, and before I knew it, hours had passed and I'd completed the entire first part of the course. I was right. My phone did start to work normally again. Other than a black liquid that began to form behind the screen during lessons, sometimes seeping out of the charging port. But that didn't matter to me anymore. The course was all I could think about. I wanted to spend every free moment that I had on it. I got chewed out at work for missing a major meeting because I was at my desk glued to my phone, engrossed. One morning, I woke up in a panic when I found things throughout the house were in disarray. Drawers were askew, chairs were toppled over, and there were tarry handprints everywhere. I thought someone had broken in overnight. It was only after I checked the locks and windows that I realized the prints were my own. It must have been me. I just couldn't remember doing it. I didn't make the connection at the time, or maybe I did. Maybe I was already too far gone to care. I just kept going through my lessons, avoiding everyone and spending all my free time working on the course, which became increasingly more complex. And then, the app informed me that the time had come to practice speaking it. Some small part of me knew, even then, that those words should have never been spoken aloud. On my first try, my mouth moved awkwardly, almost as if it wasn't meant to form the words that the app was requiring me to say. I couldn't get as far as I would have hoped because just attempting it left my throat raw. The pain, or maybe just the cacophony of the words in my ears as I spoke them, left my head spinning. I eventually had to stop once I found myself coughing a red-pink foam onto my phone screen. As I began to wipe it away, something else dripped down and mingled with it. A dark liquid from a water stain on the ceiling, a stain I hadn't recalled seeing before. The consistency, the smell, was familiar. I hadn't even realized that I'd been screaming, not until my neighbor pounded on my door later that evening and angrily informed me that he could hear me through our shared wall. That night, I dreamt of the stain in my nightmares. Something other than just that brackish liquid began to emerge from it. That next morning, when I looked up at it, I wasn't entirely confident that it hadn't expanded overnight. Even the lingering pain and a newly found deep-seated visceral fear that had been creeping in couldn't stop me from trying to get through the course. The moment I got home from work, I fell into the sofa and found myself opening the app. I craved the feeling of those words slicing into my throat like razor blades. I needed it. I began the lesson, made it a few more words in, almost a full sentence before I had to stop because I felt as if I was choking on my own blood. The dark, fetid liquid from the stain above my head had begun to drip down into my hair and open mouth. The last thing I remembered was hearing someone pounding on the front door. The next thing I knew, it was morning. I was fully clothed, sprawled in the bathtub. My eyes were dry, burning, almost as if I hadn't blinked for hours. I was clutching my phone. What seemed to have snapped me out of it was the battery dying. I was late for work without the alarm to wake me up. As I hurried to my front door, I could have sworn the stain on the ceiling looked darker, wider. I half expected to see an angry note from my neighbor taped to my front door, but there was nothing there. His house was dark. I hoped that maybe he'd just slept through it. As soon as my phone finally came back to life at my desk, I saw tons of missed calls. Several from work. Some from Heather, whom I was supposed to meet for our anniversary dinner the night before. The one I'd planned the big romantic gesture for. She informed me that she sat at the table for 2 hours, alone, before she gave up. "I'm sorry, I don't know what happened last night," I whispered over the phone, still hoarse from the night before. Unsure if it was from the words or the screaming I had done after I'd spoken them. Her tone immediately changed once I told her I'd been sick and passed out, but after assuring her I was feeling better, we made plans for later that evening. I asked if she could meet me at my place. I figured that way I wouldn't risk standing her up again. I still had hopes that she'd say yes at that point. I still had hope for a lot of things back then. I don't know why, what the hell compelled me against my better judgment. but I used the app that night while I was waiting for her. That time, the pain it felt right. My mouth moved as if the words had been known to me for centuries, perhaps longer. Long before there had been written characters to express them. The world began to spin again, but this time I embraced it. I kept going, breathing the blood in, tasting it, feeling it pull into my lungs. And then, I was staring into something dark, endless. A stringy, dripping form began to emerge. I didn't remember falling to the ground, so it took me a moment before I realized that I was staring up at the ceiling. My lips were moving on their own. I couldn't control them anymore. All I could do was lay there, eyes wide, watching the thing above my head take shape as it slowly writhed its way out. As it did so, the air in my living room changed, became stale and smelled of old things, ancient things that I had no words for, but that still managed to strike a visceral, primal chord of fear. My lips started moving. Rivulets of blood were dripping down either side of my mouth, soaking into the carpet until it was damp beneath my head. My eyes burning, unable to close. Taking it all in, I think I was weeping. Maybe tears. Maybe something else entirely. I wondered if that was the end. It pulled its grotesque body the rest of the way out. And then, I woke up in my bed. Clean. No blood to be found anywhere. I almost managed to laugh it off, dismiss it as another nightmare. Until I walked into the living room, and I saw the smears of crimson that had soaked into the fibers of the carpet. The mildewy black stain was gone from the ceiling, but tarry-looking droplets of blood mixed with something else led to the front door and then back to my bedroom. And then, I saw all the missed calls from Heather the night before, and I remembered that I'd fucked up. She'd texted me that she was outside my door, and I had 8 missed calls from her. Apparently, I'd picked up on the 9th, but we'd only talked for a few seconds, and I couldn't remember what about. I just hoped that, whatever it was, I hadn't made things worse between us, if it was even possible at that point. I was late to work again, so I tried calling her from the car. No answer. I tried to call her several more times from my office, but it always eventually went to voice. I hoped things were salvageable. I just needed to get in touch with her so I could explain somehow. When I got home, I gave it another shot. That's when I finally managed to reach her. When I heard her ringtone faintly echo through my house, my breath caught in my throat. I followed the muffled sound down the dark hallway towards my unlit bedroom, until it went to her voicemail. I called again and I located the source of the sound. It was coming from under my bed. I dropped to my knees and could make out a formless shape in the darkness below it. I whispered her name, my heart pounding out of my chest. No response. I tentatively put a shaking arm underneath, and my fingertips brushed something. Hair. Cold flesh. There was something else, too. Something I didn't recognize until I pulled it out from under the bed and into the light. Broken eyeglasses. Heather didn't wear glasses, but my neighbor did. I've been trying to tell myself it wasn't me. I never could have done this, but I'm not so sure anymore. I called the police after I threw a few things in my car and took off. I couldn't just leave them there. Not like that. I took a screenshot of one of the lessons that popped up. I hope this will be enough to help you avoid it if you see it. I'm not going to share the pronunciations. If you see this, do not start it. Uninstall the app. If that doesn't work, burn your phone if you have to. I wish I had.